Hey, this is Miko from ML Sound Lab, and this is ML Sound Lab's Wavebreaker. Okay, it's finally out, ML Sound Lab's Wavebreaker, our first ever mixing plugin. And what this actually is an 8 one-knob plugin. So essentially you have 8 knobs, and all of these are sort of magic one-knob plugins. Industry standard tested things that you need to do for mixing. This replaces channel strips, this replaces compressor plugins, this replaces your mastering clipper, and hopefully it also replaces most of your EQ needs. And I will go in depth into all that very soon, but quickly I want to go through why Wavebreaker even exists. Well, the best kind of explanation for why it exists is the notorious IQ meme. Now what this meme is all about is that you have a Gauss curve, and on the bottom end of it you have the IQ score. Let's just say someone that is unfortunately not quite as high on this curve as someone that is here. I think Mensa level of IQ would be 132 or something like that. And here in the middle is most people. And many times when you get really into the nitty-gritty, the people on the bottom end and the extreme high end tend to agree. And this definitely applies to mixing too. So if you take the very most beginner courses of mixing, so we could just use this as mixing experience curve rather than an IQ curve. If you take the very first mixing course ever, you'll be taught a set of very basic principles that have been tested and true throughout time. And then once you get more experience, you get to this point where you have people that are mostly overcomplicating things that don't need to be that complicated. For example, if you have people that love to talk about sidechains, especially in rock music, or if you have people that love to talk about parallel compression, or if you know people that love to use Sooth for tiny things here and there on tracks that are not that loud in the mix, you'll find these people. And by no means do I actually want to say anything bad about these people. I just mean that I've, first of all, been there too. I think I've done this for such a long time. I don't mean that I'm super smart. I just mean that I've done this for such a long time that I'm not really worrying about sidechaining or parallel compression and things like that. I'm not going to spend that much time on those things that only make a small difference in the mix. Now, if you talk to the biggest professionals of mixing, talk with Zach Cervini or Chris Lord-Alge or Eric Valentine or Sheps or Greg Wells or these people, many times they will actually use many of those advanced sets of tools that we just talked about, but their main tools are the basics. They are not that complicated things. And if you are new to mixing, or even if you are an advanced mixer, many times it's very time consuming to do some of the very basic things. You actually need a different plugin for this and a different plugin for that. And what ML Wavebreaker is trying to do is to have all those basic needs in this one tool that is quick and easy to use. And let's just say it's a fraction of the cost of, for example, if you just look at the saturation side of things, you can find saturation plugins that cost $200. This saturation algorithm that we have here is similar to tape saturation or transformer saturation, the warmth adding kind of saturation, or heaviness, heft adding saturation. Extremely high quality saturation, but you can find a plugin that only concentrates on saturation and may cost $200 to do that. This is only a fraction of the price, and saturation is only one small thing in this plugin, but it does it really well. And it's just one knob, so you don't have to spend hours tweaking your saturation. You just have that one knob and trust that it's one of the best kinds of saturations you can get on the market. Same goes for everything in this plugin. So let's start going through all the different functions. So like I already said, saturation in here is odd harmonics, just like tape saturation, just like transformers being driven. This is very much on par with anything you can find out there from, for example, Casrock's True Iron or FabFilter's Saturn on the tape saturation, warmth kind of saturation algorithms they have in there. this is that exact same super extremely high quality saturation, just in a one knob format. You will actually find this in our ML Drums plugin too. Then we have a compressor, and it's also a one knob compressor, but you'll see that it has 3 different modes to it. So we have punch, glue, and limit. Punch will be your 1176, more of a drum punch based or vocal based compressor. So if you want something to be really upfront in the mix, and not many things actually deserve to be there, so that's going to be vocals, snare, that's pretty much it. Many times, maybe kick, but not that many things deserve to have this punch compressor because it will take up so much space in your mix. And many times those kinds of compressors are actually mostly saturation, so you can now kind of control them separately in here. This will also add saturation, this compression part, but you can add saturation with the saturation knob to get, for example, if you want to sound just like an 1176, you can do that, but it's going to be mostly saturation and a tiny bit of the compressor knob. Already quite complicated, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Now the next compressor type we have here is glue, and that is based on a bus style compressor, so an SSL API. I think we matched it pretty closely to that Brainworks plugin Townhouse. I think that is probably one of the best bus style compressor plugins out there, so it sounds very close to that too. And this is a very transparent but a gluing compressor, so if you ever feel like your mix is just sounding like everything is not sitting together perfectly, once you have a glue compressor, it kind of makes everything sound like it's coming from the same source, kind of. It's difficult to explain, but it's very effective. If you use a compressor on your master bus, this is likely what you want to be using. Then we have a limit compressor mode here, so kind of a separate thing from the clipper that we have here. So if you use clipping, once you start lowering the volume of your tracks, you start to give saturation and distortion to your sound. So if you clip your signal, you will get dirty sounds. If you use a limiter, you will actually start to pump your sound. So if you go too far with the limit mode, you will get pumping. If you go too far with the clipper, you actually get distortion. So that's 2 different types of limiters that we have in here. This limit mode you will mostly be using on things that you really want to get kind of in control. So toms, many times you want to get those sustaining for longer. You want to use a limiter for that, limiter type compressor. Same goes for bass. If you want to get that bass low end extremely tight, you will use a limiter. On some electric guitars, but I would generally not recommend using compressors on electric guitars, especially distorted ones. Now the clip-in section of Wavebreaker is actually very much based on something like an ozone maximizer and many of the industry standard clippers, extremely high quality, and this makes your tracks sound as big as possible. Like I said, the difference between a limiter and a clipper is that a clipper will actually start to distort your signal. So this is how you get things loud, but you will add distortion. So depending on the genre and your tastes, you want to be subtle with this, or you can go very heavy with this. This one has a normalizing knob that will automatically normalize your tracks at -1 peak. So that is pretty much the industry standard. If you want to put your tracks on Spotify or wherever, you will want to have a normalization of around -1 dB. And the same thing applies for the EQ section. All of these moves are industry standard moves. So if you take the sub knob and turn it down, you're actually getting an SSL style low cut on your signal, high pass filter that is, and you can actually see the frequency curve right now, what you are actually cutting out, and this is a very natural sounding smooth low end roll off, so this will not really influence the phase information of your signal, and for that reason it's very safe to use this. If you turn this up, you're actually getting a Pultec low-end boost. Very much an industry standard way of getting more low-end. You will find people like Andrew Sheps, Jack Joseph Puig, even Chris Lorelchi use this. If they ever feel like they want more punch in their low-end, this is the way you get it. You can even add warmth to things that don't actually have any information that low, but you can add warmth and thickness to things that are not necessarily that audible. This is more about being felt. Now for the low end knob, when you turn this one down, you're actually cutting somewhere around 250 Hertz, and this is once again getting rid of the mud in the low end, very much known to be used by people like Zach Cervini, CLA, Tony Maserati. Many of these people have talked about this in the Mixing with Masters series, which you should, by the way, check out. So if you want to get rid of mud, you turn this down, you get a more clear track, and this is many times a very common problem area. Then again, when you boost the low end, this is the frequency that is essentially the snare low end, male vocal low end. Many times when you want to add some heft in there, for example for guitars too, but most of the time we actually want to be cutting the lows from guitars. But this would be the frequency if you need more low end for guitars. Now if you scoop the mids with the mid knob, you're getting rid of frequencies around 500 hertz or somewhere in there. Really just makes everything sound angrier, adds clarity to your drums. So many amazing things. Once again, a very common problem area, and the way you would use this entire EQ is to try it out quickly. If it doesn't work, don't use it. And that is the approach that we actually want to be getting here. Then again, if you are boosting this mid knob, you're actually boosting that amazing nasally area of the frequency spectrum that many times actually doesn't sound that good on its own, but especially when mixing in the mix, for example, on vocals, getting more cut to your guitars, many things like that. Just start cutting in your signal way much better in the mix when you just boost some of that amazing sounding nasally mid-range into your sound. Now the high end is something that we actually tweaks a little bit more later on. Once you start cutting the high end, you're actually getting rid of around 3K now. You will hear many audio engineers like Dave Pinsato, for example, talk about this area and it being very problematic and hurts your ears. So you can actually get rid of that nasty sounding high end with this control. Then again, if you boost this up, you're actually boosting more around 6K, and that is once again one of those frequencies where you can add snap, clarity and brightness to your sound. Many times you want to use this to get your vocals cutting. Many times you want to use this to make your guitars cut in the mix too. So many times your guitar sounds perfect, but once you actually put it in the mix, for some reason it's not cutting. Once you boost this up quite a lot, you quickly realize that you don't even have to have the guitars that high in the mix. They just sit so much better in there. And then last and definitely not least, we have the air control. If you turn this knob lower, you will add high cut, which is low pass filter for some people. And once again, it's based on an SSL style, very smooth kind of a roll up, so you're not influencing the face in nasty ways. It's a very, very usable knob. And then adding the air is also something that we actually tweaks a little bit more later on. People like Chris Loralgi, Greg Wells, so many different people actually use this kind of a brightness boost to get some final gloss in your signal, especially for mastering when you're comparing different mixes. This is many times the thing that you need to tweak to kind of match the industry standard of where the brightness needs to be. So that is essentially the entire plugin gone through as fast as possible. Last and definitely not least, we have the Wavebreaker view, which shows your incoming signal as teal, and darker teal is showing your saturation of how much saturation you're putting in, and white is showing you how much compression you're actually putting on your signal, so you can actually visually see what you're doing. So for example, right now I have this on a drum bus. Let's have a listen to what it actually sounds like, and maybe you'll get a better understanding of this plugin. Let's start with everything off right now. Everything is turned off. But with the saturation knob, we can add warmth and sustain to your drums immediately. Already that did so much to the sound. Let's add some punch, kind of 1176 style punch. So already you saw it took me maybe 5 seconds to get these drums sounding more massive and more punch, and you can visually see how you're actually influencing the waveform. So we are adding sustain with saturation in these parts, and then we are limiting the punch and making it sound more aggressive with the compressor. That took me 5 seconds to do. Imagine doing this with all the different plugins that you have and going back and forth between different UIs and how complex that might be. That is just the very quickest way of me demonstrating how fast it is to use Wavebreaker and why you should be at least trying it out. We have a free trial, you can try it out. If you like it, we have an intro deal that is sick. Like right now you need to get this. It's 50% off intro deal. Go get Wavebreaker immediately, use it on your tracks. I think you're gonna love it. I'm Mikko from ML Sound Lab. Go check the other videos that are coming out. This is just a quick run through of what Wavebreaker is all about. See you on the next one. Bye bye.